All right, welcome back to ABA exam review and the continuation of our BCBA task list series, where we're continuing with C, measurement, data display, and interpretation, C6, measure trials to criterion. Now, it's interesting that this would be its own task list item since it is relatively short, but since that's how it's presented, that's how we're going to roll with it. So we're going to break down trials to criterion, and I think it's one of the more underutilized types of measurement and types of data in ABA. I think it can be very useful in a lot of different ways, which we are going to talk about. As always, like and subscribe if you haven't already. Check out behavioranalyststudy.com for all of our study materials, including our practice exams and combo pack. When you pass, make sure you let us know so we can include you in the Sunday shout out. Work hard, study hard. Let's get going. All right, so measure trials to criterion. Trials to criterion are data measurement derived from direct measures of our dimensional quantities, meaning we have all our direct measures, things like frequency and rate and latency, where we're measuring behaviors directly, and then we can take those and find our trials to criterion. So it's a useful way of further interpreting some of the data that we collect. Now, what does it mean? It's simply the number of opportunities needed to achieve a predetermined level of performance or mastery. So, for example, let's say our mastery is 4 trials correct in a row. So we need 4 correct in a row. 0s are incorrect, 1 is correct. Well, we have an incorrect, 2 correct, an incorrect, 4 correct. How many trials to criterion? How many trials did it take to reach mastery? We'll simply count them up. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8. Trials to criterion would be 8. Same thing with the next one. If we need 3 trials in a row, 0, 0, 1, 1, 0, 1, 0, and then 3 in a row, count them up, you'll get 10. Not a complicated form of measurement whatsoever. However, it is very versatile in what can be done when used correctly, which we're about to talk about. So, what measurements are you able to use to determine trial to criterion data? Meaning, what direct measures can we convert to trial to criterion? Well, we know we can use frequency, which we just went over twice, which is probably the most commonly used and simplest way to do it, right? Just the frequency amount of correct versus incorrect. You can use rate. So if we need to hit a certain rate of behaviors, right? We need 10 in an hour or 11 an hour for mastery. We can see how many hours it takes to reach criterion. And then we can also use duration. I need you to work for 10 minutes in a row, right? 4, 5 consecutive trials, whatever it might be. All we're looking to do is trying to figure out how long or how many attempts does it take to get to mastery. So what measurements are you able to use? Well, you can use D, all the above. So continuing, again, number of opportunities needed to achieve mastery. Simple as that. 3 pretty straightforward rules here, okay, or ideas. Trials to criterion are sometimes considered the cost of an intervention or treatment. Now, what does that mean? What it means is if you have intervention A and you have intervention B, and you want to compare these, and our trials to criterion say it took 5 trials with A and 8 trials with B. Well, the cost of B is higher. It's going to take longer. It's going to potentially use more resources, potentially more time. Now, small sample size, right? We would want more data, but it's one way of comparing interventions. We have multiple treatments. Let's test them out on a few learners. Which one is more effective at teaching? Which one gets the learner to mastery quicker? Because that might be the one we want to use going forward. Now, you can also use trials to criterion as a dependent variable in an experiment. For example, if our dependent variable is trials to criterion, so we want to reduce the trials, right? And so we've got a situation where it's taking a child very long to learn something. And so we keep measuring trials to criterion, and we want to reduce that. So we intervene. And after our intervention, our independent variable is introduced, the time it takes to get to mastery starts to significantly decrease. So you can use trials to criterion as a sort of dependent variable in an experiment. And then finally, you can use it to assess learners' overall ability to learn. If we think about certain learners versus other learners, we might consider one learner a quicker learner. And what do we mean by quicker? Well, we mean they get to mastery faster than the other person. If I'm teaching two learners addition problems, whatever learner gets to mastery quicker, we'll consider that learner's ability to learn more prevalent, right? It's going to be better. They've reached mastery quicker. In other words, their trials to criterion were lower. So if you're teaching an individual shapes, like square, so you teach square, and it took them 6 trials to get square, then you teach them triangle. Well, what we hope is they can learn triangle quicker, right? Maybe that takes 4. And then you teach them circle, and that takes 3. So if we're reducing our trials, then the learner has potentially improved their capacity to learn. So these are more advanced ideas that you can use at trials to criterion. And like I said in the beginning, I think trials to criterion is really underutilized as a teaching method. What better way to evaluate your learner's prowess and how long it takes them to quote unquote learn than to actually measure it? So again, you can use frequency and rate and duration and all these different direct measures, convert them to trials to criterion, and start to get a better idea of 1, how your interventions are performing, and 2, how well your learners are learning. So that's really it for trials to criterion. It is interesting that it's its own task list item. You would think it might be paired with another derived measure, like maybe percentage, right? But it's not. So we separated it out. No big deal, right? As always, we're going to have at least one of these a week. So keep following. And if you're watching now, there's a potential or a good chance that the next one's already out. So watch to the end of the video, click the next video, and you'll move forward, right? And so we have a whole playlist, and in the playlist is all the videos we have up to that point. So we are putting these out as quickly as we can to try to get through the 5th edition task list before the next task list in a couple years. With that said, like, subscribe if you haven't already. Check out behavioranalyststudy.com for all of our study materials, including our practice exams and combo pack. When you pass, please let us know so we can include you in the Sunday shout out. Work hard, study hard. See you soon.